Okay. So, I'll just repeat myself quickly, and we'll start with the very first wherein I told you how news is a very important aspect of our lives. It's a way of progress. It's a way of ascertaining how we as a human society, as a human civilization, as a modern day society have to keep a record of it, to keep a track of it. It's a way of communicating with the general public, with other human beings, and project what is of value to them, what would be, newsworthy for them, what would it, what are the informations which would be worth telling them, worth sharing with them. So news, if we look at the whole concept of it, is a very important aspect of our lives, and it can very well be gauged from the way we see a whole spurt in news channels, a whole proliferation of news channels, media industry becoming very, very big, and becoming almost synonymous with how we understand our society, and the progress we've been able to make. So it's almost indispensable part of it, right? Because it keeps a record of it, it keeps a track of it, it enables us to understand our passage through history, our present concerns, our present day issues, our present day challenges, the perils and the hazards that we face today, that the human civilization faces today. Those are the issues and the concerns that are brought into the forefront by various news channels, news houses, and almost about the modern society. We cannot do without our daily dose of news. That's a way of keeping ourselves abreast with whatever is happening around us. And as I told you, it's the fourth pillar in a democratic society. While we have the judiciary, which ensures justice to all, we have the legislature, which implements and makes all the laws. We also have the media and the press, which keeps a track of how things are progressing in a democratic society. So wherever it almost is something that is akin to imposing checks and balances on how the government is functioning, how different businesses are functioning, how the judiciary is functioning. So it gives you a kind of a freedom to voice your concerns and to voice your views regarding the functioning of various domains in the society, for us to be able to do things in a much better way. So, as I said, it is something which enables us to understand the various pitfalls that are there in front of us, the various difficulties and challenges that are there in front of us, and how we've been able to overcome those in the past, how we have journeyed through them in the past, and how would we continue to do so in the future. Right, so it's a record of our past. It's also throwing ample light on what's happening in the present, and how all these would have an impact on our future. Right, and we talked about uh, you know what makes good news, whether it is only a reporter finding satisfaction in the kind of news he would want to cover and present and write, or whether it is a trained editor trying to home on to this certain kinds of news that he would want to publish or he would want to share. Or is it about something that we are sharing with the public with regards to any important event or any important happening in a timely manner, whether it's some kind of a riot breaking out somewhere, some kind of a major accident happening, a plane crash, or maybe some important win in the field of sports, or maybe some sudden sort of windfall in the world of economics, anything of that kind, any important treaty being signed by say political rivals or competitors. So what it is brought to the people in a timely manner, in a time bound manner. And it also is the day and age when all this is being done in the form of discussions. And therefore, in order to bring about a whole lot of stimulating information to the people, to their bedrooms, while they watch these on their TVs, in the morning while sipping their cup of coffees, or late in the night when they are, sort of retiring for the day, it brings in a whole lot of stimulating information for them to ponder on, to think about, to reflect on, and also to be aware of how, as to how things are changing around them. And we also heard of some other definition of news in a hurry, or someone giving it in another interesting definition as tomorrow's history. And John Bogart, the 19th century editor, saying that when a dog bites news, it's only when a man bites a dog that it becomes news. So anything which is outrageous, anything which is very difficult or to understand, comprehend, which is not amenable to logic, which is preposterous, those are the controversial things, those are the newsworthy things, those are the things which would capture the imagination of people and would sell. So first of all, it is any piece of story, right? We also, use the word story for news. We say it's a very interesting story. That's a very important. I'm going to bring a very interesting news story for you. So news has to be understood as a story, because it's a person sort of narrating it, are writing it, are expressing it in a narrative, right? So it has to be understood as a story. A story is a narrative. So something which is narrated, something, or maybe a report wherein you carry back some information from a particular place, from a particular incident where other people were not present. So the correspondents are the one who are sent to cover those stories, cover those incidents, and they bring back a news report. They bring back the news item in the form of a story, in the form of an account. So it is their account. you know if someone else was sent to cover it, maybe he will present it in a different way. So it's very high, it's highly subjective. Your news stories are very subjective in nature. Though the idea is to bring in as much objectivity as possible, but one has to admit that a news cannot be so objective as one would want it to be. The personal element does show up, the personal bit of prejudice or understanding does create that news story, and hence the word story, hence calling it a certain kind of a narrative. Then the second important bit here is that it's an account of an idea, of an event, of a problem, of an issue. So when you have incidents of rape, when you have incidents of the Sensex falling, or when you have incidents of a certain business empire crumbling, or maybe striking unthinkable business deal internationally, all these are news items which sell and are important to a society, and people would be concerned about them. People would want to know, okay, how are things changing, if the banks are going to be privatized or not, if the market is going to be opened up or not, if the schools are suddenly going to start or not during the pandemic. So all these are concerning each one of us, right? These are issues which concern us, right? So when these are being brought into the ambit of news, uh, they sell, they are newsworthy, they are important to people, and would definitely be taken as news. of a vast majority of the world population, right? So that was the current thing. That was the one that was doing the round. So those two people were at the helm of affairs, and those were the people who everybody seemed to be interested in. And similarly, in the Indian scenario, when elections happened, so Bihar became the talking town, and everybody was talking about how things would pan out there in Bihar. So this is what is important, right? News is all about current events, and while a whole lot of journalists would agree on what news is not, it's very difficult to arrive at the whole concept of what news exactly is. So the real problem is that it's difficult to say what exactly news is. While we can say, okay, this is not news, this is not worthy of being called a news. Most people will be able to figure out what is not saleable, what is not newsworthy. It will be much difficult to ascertain what is newsworthy. And also, as I told you earlier, it's a story, it's an account, it's a narrative, it's a report carried by a specific person. So you have correspondence, news correspondence spread over the world, spread over the country, carrying tasks of capturing, of covering a particular incident in a particular location. So there will be a certain degree of subjectivity in the news. It's not a matter of absolutes. It's a matter of relative newsworthiness. Okay, so the way they will be presented is different, and if a different news channel has sent another correspondent, you will find that he's capturing it and covering the whole incident in a different way, right? So, and different news items will be reflected on different news channels. What is newsworthy for one channel may not be newsworthy for another channel. For one media house, maybe the presidential elections were more important. For another news channel, maybe the Bihar elections were more important. For another news channel, maybe different things would be of more importance. So timeliness is the most important thing. Whatever is happening today, you have to be able to bring it to the world, bring it to the people, bring it to the masses in a time bound manner, in a timely manner. If the crash is taking place today, what's the point of talking about the crash 3 days later? It's over and done with. Everybody, someone or the other has come to know of it, then there's no point talking about the crash 3 days later, right? So timeliness is of great value here, and how impactful that news would be, what be the impact that that news can make on people, is also very significant. So the impact of the news, sometimes certain controversies are very significant, certain issues are so significant, and they have a huge impact on the people at large. Prominence, how big or small that news is, how much proximity, if we're talking of news from within the home country, or we are talking of news from faraway lands, from the international circuit, or it's a local news or something which is happening in your own city, or whether it is news from some faraway distant part of your own country. So what is the proximity, of that location from where the news is being presented, or from where the news is being extracted and being covered. Singularity, so news has this element of being singular, has this element of being peculiar. So certain incident happening somewhere is very unique, and there is this whole element of uniqueness about it, peculiarity about it, singularity about it, and therefore it sells. Strange incident happens somewhere. Say, for instance, if we lost the god of football yesterday, it becomes news item. It's an important thing, because it's a unique individual who has passed away, and it would be important for people to cover it and know about it, right? And similarly, if some strange kind of an incident happens somewhere around in our own country, you would want to cover it because it's quite unique, it's quite peculiar, and you might not find parallels elsewhere. You might not find similar such things happening elsewhere, and therefore one would want to present it as news. And these are issues of human interest. So you might want to cover stories, where some people have maybe shown some great philanthropy, maybe by donating huge amounts of their wealth for some important causes. Or you would want to talk of how, as it was the news doing the rounds of how Sonu Sood came forward as the messiah for a whole lot of migrant laborers during pandemic, and how he helped arrange buses for them, for their travel. So these are stories of human interest. They capture people's imagination. But it's important to also be able to handle issues quite sensitively. And do these news reporters do that? Are they trained enough, to handle issues in a sensitive way is also an important question to ask, especially with regards to racial conflicts, ethnic conflicts, religious conflicts, where the stakes are very, very high. And as it is, I told you it's highly subjective, it's a narrative, and very imperfect. News gathering is an imperfect act art. So people will cover different aspects based on their own understanding, based on their own prejudices and biases. So are we able to hit upon the right things? Maybe are we able to touch the right chords? Are we able to hit the right notes or not? Are we able to cover it sensitively or not is very, very important. So when you're dealing with stuff like riots, when you're dealing with things like wars and other deep-seated prejudices, where the responsibility of the media becomes even greater, that they have to, capture these incidents and these events with a greater degree of understanding and responsibility and sensitivity, and not just do things, for the heck of it, or be off the cuff with regards to such news items, or be careless with regards to projecting these, which would cause further melee amongst the masses, more unrest amongst the masses. And of course, while this may not be very true for the current news and news media and news houses, we find that they're all sold out, and the term often given to them is that of prostitutes. And we feel that the political hold over these news channels is what determines what kind of news goes on air. But then, largely speaking, broadly speaking, news is supposed to be, of concern to everyone. There shouldn't be any conspiratorial elements in news. That news media should not be engaging in any such conspiracies, spreading conspiracy theories or things like that. They ought to be as sensitive as they can, rather than creating a kind of a mess by touching upon volatile issues in a insensitive way. But largely, most media houses deal with things in a pragmatic way. They're more interested in results, they're more interested in their TRPs. So you would often find people bringing in news which sells, bringing in news which is going to be stimulating, bringing in news which is going to be which is going to be the things which people would like, rather than touching upon other issues, which sometimes go unnoticed, and which are not even carried by them. So there is a checklist for people who are gathering the news, people who are creating and writing the content for the news writers, correspondents, readers, anchors. Sometimes the news editors and news readers are creating their own news. They are the ones who write down the content for their news, or they have a team which suitably backs them up with the content after thorough research of the whole story. But then when they are for them to know that they must ensure that whatever news they are circulating, whatever news they are covering and projecting is true. It should not be manipulated. It should not be something which is just being created for their own vested interests, right? Or because they have their affiliations with a particular political party, and therefore they need to support them, and therefore they need to come up with news which would align with their interests, right? That should not happen. But that is the thing which is sadly happening today. And then what would be the impact of those events and those circumstances, surrounding the issue? This is also something that they must figure out. What would be the impact of those incidents, events? Or is the news story fair to all the concerned? Are you trying to project someone in a bad light, or are you being fair to them? These days, they say media has become the judge, jury, and the judicator. So they are the ones who are passing judgment on who is guilty and who's not. So you find they are the ones who are if you take up the Sushant Singh case, then people, different news channels have their own agendas they were fulfilling by way of repeating the story or covering the story for a long time. And were they being fair to everyone? One can't say, so again, this is something that they need to focus on. There's something called ethics, ethics in your domain, in your chosen profession. So when we talk of media, so then there is something called professionalism, there's something called media ethics. So even they should be adhere to a good sense of ethics and values, and not just do things which are going to be for their own monetary gains or for their own publicity. And then whether the news is public or strictly a private issue, will the story make a difference? Will it quell rumors? Will it put rest to all the rumors which are doing the rounds? Or how would you justify your decision to your audience? This is also something that they should be worried about. Will they be able to justify what news they are telling and sharing to their audience? And how would you treat the story if you were the one who was at the receiving end? So the way the one scene where Sushant Singh's girlfriend, then is, had you been there, would you have treated the story in that insensitive a way, or in a more sensitive way? This is very important. So this checklist will help us in coming up with news items which is really worth it, worth going through, worth reading through, rather than guided by selfish vested interests. So, sensitive issues can be expressed, explained, covered with the help of these 10 tips here. So, avoid writing in cliches. Cliches are oft repeated phrases which are repeated so often that they lose their sheen, they lose their their dazzle, they lose their their essence. So there's no point writing in cliches. Also, don't believe everything someone tells you. Don't hunt for a definitive truth. There's no definite truth, there are multiple truths, and different people can come up with their own truths. So one has to agree on plurality, one has to and have a good understanding of what is relativity of truth, who is looking at the truth and from where. Who Nobody has if it's okay with
Yes,
you all.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So when we talk of news items, and I hope I'm making sense to all of you. I'm sorry, I've been going on and on and on, and I haven't even paused to check it up with you if you people are there with me and understanding what is being spoken about here.
Not a problem, ma'am.
Is it making sense to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Any issues, any observations, anything you would want to say or add? Nobody wants to say anything? Nobody wants to say anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So when we talk of a TV news package, then there are four elements in the package. There is the introduction or the cue, which is read by the anchor. Then there are pictures and footage and the graphics, which is there. Then the voiceover is there, where the reporter is words are read over the pictures. And then there are sound bites also from the interviewers, which are featured in the package. This is how the news items are packaged these days. So it gives you an idea of how news, what goes into news making, right? And what is a package? A package is a story. So generally, what kind of a story is it? It's just a pre-planned thing, or reactive to a very hard story. Also, some important thing has happened. Something very significant has happened, and you want to create a story around it. So you've created a package, a news package, and you have done your homework, your groundwork, researched it well, and created, maybe covered the incident, so you have glimpses of that footage, or your footage of that particular scene, so certain glimpses of it. Maybe you've interviewed certain people, and that's also part of the story, that's also part of the package. So it's well researched, all set up, well structured, all shot properly, written properly, voiced properly, edited properly, and broadcasted properly. So when we talk of the news writing tips, then we have to keep everything very simple. The language must be conversational, almost like a dialogue going on between two people, conversational language. We need to use the present tense to make the story look very, very immediate, that it's something which has just happened. So we use the present tense there. We also ought to be using more of declarative sentences and short sentences, assertive sentences, things that we are, coming up as declarations, as pronouncements. So that should be the nature of your, statements in your news items. And also, uh, besides the who, what, when, where, why, and how in your lead, you also use a sentence for each idea, and you should be able to read each sentence aloud in just one breath. So these are some of the things which are important. Keep the sentences short so that you can read the sentence in one go, and also focus on everything, all the 5 W's: what, where, when, why, and how, pertaining to that particular story. There are time limitations. News is always time bound, so you have half an hour for a news story, or maybe 1 hour news hour discussion, or maybe 20 minutes for which the news would be displayed, the headlines will be discussed. So all that, so you have to be wary of what are the time limitations for you, and how it is to be broadcasted, what are the time constraints, how simplest of stories tend to run in just 30 seconds. Even this is the case with a whole lot of news items. And news readers, they speak very fast, right? So almost to the tune of 140 to 180 words per minute. But then, even while they read fast, there is a great deal of clarity in their articulation. Each word is very crystal clear. Each word is well understood, absorbed, pronounced correctly, and therefore it makes sense. And audience cannot absorb as much information listening to a broadcast story as they could reading a story of similar length. So sometimes there's a difference between what is broadcasted and what is presented as a written story. So written stories, you can read a whole lot of information, absorb a whole lot of information because you're reading at your own pace. But when something is being aired, the chances of you losing interest, or your attention span not being as much, or your concentration not being as much, or your listening ability not being as much, you may not be able to absorb the whole of it. But yes, partially you'll be able to do that. Then a few more writing tips are mentioned. One must use round numbers. No point coming up with exact figures. Long titles need to be shortened. Names and initials need to be used. We omit the middle names. We avoid using the courtesy titles like Mr. and Miss. We go straight away and address the person with their name, and or maybe with their designations. And we don't use unfamiliar names in the leads. What are leads? Leads is again a news item, and there are hard leads and there are soft leads. We'll come to that. Attribution is very important. If someone has said something, you have to correctly attribute it, to make it credible, believable. It's one of the most important tools of journalism. So you have to correctly say who said so and why and where, right? So there can't be any mistakes with regards to. So generally we talk of within inverted commas, as you express the whatever someone has said verbatim, exactly the way it is. So but in written stuff again, we have to do the same. We have to present it in the inverted commas. Wrong, I am not a crook, the president said. And look at the way of saying it. The president said in his words, I'm not a crook. So the clear attribution has to be there, so that nobody misquotes it or nobody misunderstands it, that whether who is the one who's saying it and why did he say that, in what context was it said. So leads are the most important part in a news story, and it sets the tone for the news. So what is a lead? Lead is the way in which you will grab the attention of the audience. The initial lines which gets you the audience's attention, which hooks the audience's attention. It can be anything exciting, dramatic, clever, intriguing, or even provocative. But your lead has to be either it's a hard one wherein you come straight to the matter, you hit the nail on the head right away, or it can be a soft lead where you say things in a little polite, in a little indirect way, in a little roundabout sort of a way, right? So if you look at what lead is, then this is what a hard lead looks like. So when you say at least 30 people were injured in the collapse of a building, this is hard lead. Immediate. There is no beating around the bush. There is a hard news which is coming your way. Strictly, straightforward news. But when the same thing is spoken in a slightly different way, a building collapses in Lahore, at least 30 people have. No, this is a soft lead where you are, warming up the audience, where you have chosen an indirect way, a little more polite way of saying the things. So hard lead is when there is a sudden solid way of dealing the information to the audience. And soft lead is when there is a roundabout, softer input, a little more polite, a little more indirect way of dealing with the information. And throw away, you can go through these. Now, what are the qualities of an anchor? A good anchor must have good knowledge base. Your knowledge has to be very good. You should be aware of a whole lot of things. Only then you'll be able to talk. You also have to have the ability to process new information. How quickly can you grapple with new things, new ideas, new information that is coming your way is also very important. And a anchor must also have a good ethical compass. He must be an ethical man. He or she must be sensitive. He or she must have strong values, a good character, and only then he'll be able to handle all kinds of difficult subjects in a more sensitive way. He has to have a good command over the language, great sense of timing also, because he is dealing with certain time constraints. So how quickly is he able to bring in maximum in that given time, and say things in a timely manner where they have the most impact. These the sense of acute sense of timing is going to be very, very significant for a good anchor. Should have great voice modulation, should be able to do a whole lot of activity with his voice, vary the pitch, pace, and the power of his voice. So all these are elements of modulation. I'm not going into it. Them you can read them on your own. They have a good dressing style. Anchors have to be presentable. They must look good. They must wear the right kind of outfits. Nothing too catchy, because then it will distract the audience from the news, and people would be focusing more on how they are dressed up. So something simple. Generally, most anchors dress up formally, because that's the required dress code for them. And then for different kinds of information, you can have different formats. So we have in the media, cookery shows, travel shows, interviews, reality shows, or hosting a match, or even interviews. So this is just for your information. It's got nothing to do with news making. This is about anchoring. How does an anchor handle these formats? Yeah, if he's an anchor of a cookery show, how will he handle things? If he's an anchor of a travel show, how will he handle things? If he's interviewing someone, how will an anchor handle interviews? Or if he's an anchor of a reality show, so how does he do it? So maybe you can go through the details of what is there in this. An anchor in a cookery show will also have to be someone with good knowledge of cooking. Only then he'll be in a position to add some value to his anchoring. So this is what the script of an the format of an anchoring show, cookery show, would look like. So today we are going to prepare a lovely dish. We need the following appliances and we need the following ingredients. We hope you enjoyed our recipe. And then there are travel shows. So how do the anchors engage with the audience, So they take them to food joints, shopping areas, some speciality of those areas, the city's culture, and bring in a whole lot of excitement and present things in that fashion. So this is what the script would look like. So you can go through it. And then when you're dealing with in an interview, the anchor also has to do proper research about the person whom he would be interviewing. So when he has done thorough research, he will also write down each and everything, the questions he wants to ask, and then make it an interesting watch for the viewers. So when you're interviewing someone for a reality show, you have to be spontaneous, think on his feet, be creative, think out of the box, come up with interesting advices, make things together creatively, and then he'll be able to grip the attention of the audience. When you're hosting a match, the knowledge of the game. How much do you know the game? You have to know the game very well, the history of the game, because you'll be able to in your anchoring, you would want to touch upon past matches. So are you able to do that? So when you use a teleprompter, it's the news which is running in front of you. It's placed in front of the camera, and the news reader, the anchor, can read from the teleprompter. So it would be, the people will feel that the anchor is facing the camera while he is actually reading from the teleprompter. So there is practice which is needed. So you have to practice well to be able to use a teleprompter. Sometimes you might miss the teleprompter, or maybe you miss a particular point in the teleprompter. So you have note cards in front of you, kept in front of you, or maybe your laptop, which is projecting it, and therefore you need to catch up on your laptop. Sight reading is when you're doing the actual reading and your teleprompter is not available. And a whole lot of anchors also create their own concepts, right? So there are certain shows, like you have Grill's Discovery show, wherein he talks about various life-threatening situations and how does he handle things in various jungles and everything. So it's a self-created concept. So certain self-created concepts sell very well. And what is important here is to keep a, you know, keep everything very brief, give it the right treatment, have a good balance in your script, make sure your script and the ending of the script is also there, and you are taking everything to a logical ending, make it readable, make it moving, and cut the negatives out of your script, y- and make all the passive elements into active elements. Now the Kapil Sharma show is also something original, something creative. It's a show where the anchor is dealing with whole lot of comedy and fun elements are there, a little bit of skits are there, and then you have famous people, especially film stars from the world of entertainment, coming in, and they're trying to market their new movies. So idea generation is, what is your idea and how do you sell it? So the whole working towards it. Resource management is what all resources you would be needing and how to manage those. So you need to have good skills for interviews, good anchoring for your documentary style, using the spoken language properly. Shireen Bhan is a very famous Indian journalist and news anchor of CNBC, and these are the famous personalities on the Indian scene, Indian circuit, who are very prominent with regards to their. We all know of Arnab Goswami and Barkha Dutt and Vinod Dua for the Hindi. So I think with this we've come to the end of our discussion. I'll be sharing the material, uh, and you guys can go through it in your spare time.
All right, ma'am.
Okay, so I think with that, I would like to end the class. Thank you, Deepak, for doing the recording. Thank you, Nanak. You're always a lifesaver. And thank you, Simran, for your, for volunteering to do it.
Welcome, ma'am.
Okay, bye bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, ma'am. You too. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.